My name is Will Conley. I was born here in Fort Myers, Florida. It was very awkward growing up. I was very overweight, and I struggled, I would say, from 6th grade on with my learning. It was very difficult for me, and right away I was looking for any other outlet besides the education to fill my time, because I was looking for ways to feel like I would fit in. I started to experiment with marijuana and with alcohol. I was far less awkward, at least in my own mind, because of it. And this is where my story, I would say, sort of begins. It was tough, and I was constantly using more and more to try and compensate for what I felt were my shortcomings in my life. Started working, and the one thing that always stuck with me, the one thing that always resonated, is my mother and father instilled this really nice work ethic in me from a very early age. So I started working and was doing very well. People, they would see that there was this other side of me. There was a different person there. I was a sad person, lonely. Wound up going to the university that I had always dreamt about going to. I always wanted to be a chef, and Johnson & Wales University was the place that I felt I could really excel in becoming a chef. So I ended up going to school there and graduated in 2008. I started using pharmaceutical medications, and that's when I started to notice that there was a real addiction. After about 6 months, I started to see the really negative side effects to using opiates, and so I started buying drugs on the street. Started experimenting with heroin, and it got to a point where I became lost. The charade that I had been living for as long as I was no longer a charade. It was right in my face, and it was right in everybody else's faces. I moved down to Fort Myers about 1.5 years ago. Things were going well. I had taken a nice job doing what I loved, which was cooking. And I was sober for a very short period of time, almost 3 months. And then all of a sudden, the addiction came back stronger again. And I started stealing alcohol from my work. Sober for 88 days, I remember. And I was so happy because I was actively seeking recovery at this point. I was looking around here in Fort Myers for places that I could get myself the help that I knew at this point in my life I needed. I knew that my parents saw I needed. Bought some alcohol and brought it home and drank, and got into a huge fight with my mother and father, and telling me that they were done. That was my bottom, which I will never forget. It stays with me even to this day. So the idea of being homeless was something that was alien to me. I had no idea of what it meant to be without a home. And I don't care if you've been homeless for an hour or you've been homeless for 10 years, that moment of having nothing but the clothes on your back is a very humbling experience. I know that I am an alcoholic. I know that I am a drug addict, and I know that if I don't do something about it, that I'm going to be dead. I don't know the area, and I come to a crossroads, if you will, of 2 streets, and I look up, and here's this big red shield. There's a point in a man's life, I believe, when he wants something more for himself. I realized at that moment that I wanted something different for myself. But instantly in that moment, the Lord grabbed my heart and he said, "This is the life that I want you to live." And it was that day, it was about a month into my program, that I went back to my dorm and I asked Jesus Christ to be my Lord and Savior. I surrendered my life to the Lord. And when I did, I look back and now everything has changed. He directed me here to the Salvation Army. I now have a purpose for my life, a shield that I see here on a daily basis at the Salvation Army. It was what I first saw when I came here. It was the very first thing that I was able to recognize because I didn't know the Salvation Army, but I've seen that shield growing up. I've seen those people ringing bells growing up. But that shield today represents to me a sort of a blanket or a warm meal or a comforting place to sleep, because the Salvation Army didn't know who I was. They didn't know where I came from. They just saw one of God's children who was lost in the wilderness, who was desperate to find his way home. And the Salvation Army is a shield. And today, because of the love that Christ has for me and the healing power and transformation that he can do in a man, now I have the opportunity to be a shield for somebody else. Today I'm a chef, and I'm happy, but that's just my trade. Today I am a soldier for Christ, and that's my heart.